It's really hard to fathom how dominant the Celtics were in the late 50s and 60s. Out of a possible 13 championships from 1957 to 1969, Boston won 11 of them, including an unprecedented 8 in a row from 1959 to 1966. But barely anyone talks about the one time they lost in the finals. In 1958, the St. Louis Hawks beat them to win their first and only championship. The Hawks were led by big man Bob Petitt, one of the most underrated legends of all time. Although he was relatively skinny for his position, listed at only 205 pounds, he was a monster on the glass. He could score inside and outside, as well as pass. Bob was one of the first stars of a relatively young NBA, winning its first MVP in 1956. Although he was part of the only team to beat Bill Russell in the finals, he still flies under the radar in history, as he was one of the most consistent players of his time. But today's video will shed a light on his Hall of Fame career. Welcome to PZ Hoops, and let's get down to it. Pettit was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where he played at Baton Rouge High, being cut from varsity as a freshman and sophomore. After he was cut, he played in the church league and grew 5 inches in less than a year, so his father encouraged him to work on his game until he got better. His hard work paid off as he was a starter on varsity as a junior, making an all-city prep team. As a senior, he led Baton Rouge High to his first state title in 20 years. Pettit was now 6'7" and being recruited by the top schools in the country, but he decided to stay home and play for LSU. Bob made his varsity debut in 1952, and he was the best player on the team by far. He led the SEC in scoring, averaging 25.5 points a game, ranking 3rd in the nation. He also averaged 13 rebounds, leading LSU to a 17-7 record, placing 2nd in the conference, but not good enough to make the tournament. Bob was named to the All-SEC first team. As a junior, he led the Tigers to a 22-3 record, including an undefeated record in conference play, winning the SEC title and securing a tournament berth. LSU would have the 16th ranked offense in the nation, as he averaged a conference-leading 25 points and 14 rebounds, being named a second-team All-American. LSU's first tournament game was against Lebanon Valley. They won by 13 as Bob scored 28 points. He scored 29 in an 8-point win over Holy Cross. LSU would lose to Indiana in the Final Four as they shot 31% from the floor as a team. They also would lose to Washington in the 3rd place game as Bob Hubregs lit them up for 42 points. Bob's senior year was his best. He averaged 31.5 points and 17 rebounds, becoming a first-team All-American. He scored 60 points in the game against Louisiana College, a then SEC record. LSU finished 20-5, going undefeated in the SEC again and capturing another regular season crown. Their first game was against Jesse Arnell in Penn State, as they would lose by 8, even though Bob put up 34 points and 24 rebounds on 13 of 21 shooting. They would lose the next game against Indiana again, as the Tigers shot 30% as a team. Pettit was chosen 2nd overall in the 1954 NBA draft by the Milwaukee Hawks, behind Frank Selvey. The Hawks were the worst team in the league last season at 21-61, but they had a few decent players like Bob Harrison, Chuck Scher, and Chuck Cooper. Coach Red Holzman decided to switch things up for Bob though. He saw his 205-pound frame and slotted him at forward, as Bob didn't have the strength to bang down low with the bruisers in the paint. Bob would later say, "In college, I played the standing pivot. My back was to the basket. In the pros, I'm always outside. Everything I do is facing the basket now. That was my chief difficulty in adjusting. The fact that I had never played the forward before. But this transition to the outside was a good choice for Bob, as he could thrive in more open space." Bob averaged 20 points, 14 rebounds, and 3 assists. He won Rookie of the Year, made the All-Star team and the All-NBA first team. The number 1 pick by the Bullets, Frank Selvey, was traded to the Hawks 11 games into the season, averaging 18.5 points and 5 rebounds, joining Bob in the All-Star game. But despite the star duo, the Hawks were terrible, as they finished 26-46, and they were last in scoring and offensive rating. In 1955, the Hawks moved to St. Louis, and Bob changed his game again. This time, he tried to initiate contact with his opponents and get to the foul line. Offensive rebounds were worth 8 to 12 points a night for me. Then I get another 8 to 10 at the free throw line. All I had to do was make a few jump shots, and I was on my way to a good night. The Hawks improved a lot this season, finishing 3rd in points allowed in defensive rating, ending with a 33-39 record. Bob averaged 25.7 points a game, along with 16 rebounds, winning the first MVP in NBA history. Along with another All-Star and All-NBA season, Bob won the scoring title, leading the league in rebounding and free throws made and attempted. The Hawks finished with the same record as the Minneapolis Lakers at 33-39, so they had a tiebreaker game for the second place spot in the Western Division. George Mikan had come out of retirement while still being the executive, joining Slater Martin and Clyde Lovelett, as they beat the Hawks 103-97, as Bob had 23 points on 7 for 23 shooting. They faced the Lakers again in the Western Division semifinals. Bob scored 25, as 4 other Hawks scored double figures as they won the game by 1 point. Game 2 was a complete blowout as the Hawks lost by 58 points, shooting just 24% from the field, while every member of the Lakers scored in double figures. This still remains to this day as the biggest playoff margin of victory in NBA history. Bob put the team on his back in Game 3, willing them to a 1-point win, as he scored 41 points on 14 of 24 shooting along with 13 free throws. The Western Division Finals saw the Hawks face the Fort Wayne Pistons with their star duo of George Yardley and Larry Faust. Bob had a bad Game 1, only scoring 7 points on 3 for 12 from the field, but the Hawks still won by 1 point. He redeemed himself with a 19-point Game 2 as St. Louis won again. Fort Wayne won Game 3 by 28 as Bob scored 16 points on 2 of 8 shooting, but he was 12 for 13 from the line. The Pistons took Game 4 as Bob had 15 points and 15 rebounds on 5 for 16 shooting. Bob had another bad game in Game 5 as he shot 3 for 16 as the Hawks lost the game and the series. In 1956, the Hawks had the draft rights to Bill Russell, but they traded him to the Celtics for forwards Ed McCauley and Cliff Hagan. They also traded for Slater Martin from the Lakers. Now that the Hawks had other scorers on the team, they stood more of a chance. Bob still averaged his all-star numbers, 25 points and 15 rebounds, as McCauley and Martin joined him in the All-Star game, putting up 16 and 11 points respectively. Despite this, the Hawks started 14-19, and Coach Holzman was fired, as Slater Martin had to take over as a player coach, along with Alex Hannum as well. The Hawks finished 34-38 for the first seed in the Western Division. They won 2 tiebreakers against the Pistons and Lakers. Facing the Lakers in the Western Division Finals, Bob put up 22 points and 16 rebounds in Game 1. He dropped 30 points and 7 rebounds in Game 2. Bob put up 35 points and 17 rebounds in a double overtime win in Game 3 that clinched the series. The Hawks met the Celtics in the NBA Finals. Boston was by far the best team in the league as they had the MVP Bob Cousy, Tom Heinsohn, and Bill Sharman, along with Bill Russell, who had become a star in his rookie season, leading the league in rebounds. The Hawks won Game 1 by 2 in double overtime as Bob dropped 37 points and 14 rebounds. Bob shot 3 for 16 in Game 2 as they lost by 26, followed by a 26-point and 28-rebound performance on 9 for 33 shooting in a 2-point win in Game 3. The final 3 games were back and forth until Game 7 as Bob hit 2 free throws with 6 seconds left to force overtime, but his 39-19 wasn't enough to win as they lost by 2 in double overtime. The Hawks finally put it together in 1957. Bob had his usual dominant season, 24.5 points and 17.5 rebounds, along with another all-star season from Martin and Hagan. The Hawks won a franchise record 41 games, facing the Detroit Pistons in the Western Division Finals. Cliff Hagan shined in this series, averaging 31 points a game, along with 18 from Pettit as they won in 5, rematching the Celtics in the finals. The Hawks won the championship in 6 games, as Bob averaged 29 and 17, along with 25 and 10 from Cliff Hagan. Ed McCauley took over as player coach in 1958, as Bob had his second MVP season, averaging a league-leading 29 points a game, along with 16.5 rebounds. Hagan and Martin delivered their usual production again, as the Hawks had the best defense in the league, finishing with a 49-23 record, securing a division final matchup against the Lakers, as a young Elgin Baylor emerged as a star, averaging 28 points. Bob held his own though with 28-12, but the Lakers won in 6. Bob and Cliff both averaged 20 and 10 in 1959. Wilt Chamberlain had the best rookie season of all time, dropping 38 points and 27 rebounds a game, winning the MVP as well. St. Louis faced the Lakers again in the division finals. They won in 7 games, facing the Celtics in the finals. The Hawks would lose in 7 as Boston began their dominant run of 8 straight championships. Bob averaged 26 and 15 in the series. The Hawks drafted Lenny Wilkens 6th overall in the 1960 draft. Pettit averaged 28 and 20, finishing second in MVP voting to Bill Russell. The Hawks won 51 games, and they faced the Lakers in the playoffs. Elgin Baylor averaged 37 and 15, while Bob averaged 29 and 18 in a back-and-forth 7-game series. But the Hawks would advance to the finals before losing to Boston in 5 games. The Chicago Packers joined the NBA in 1961, and Wilt Chamberlain absolutely dominated the league as he averaged an all-time high 50 points a game along with 25 rebounds, along with his legendary 100-point game on March 2nd, 1962. While that was going on, the Hawks were collapsing as they went through 3 head coaches, as Bob even had to coach a few games himself. He would still average his usual great numbers with 31 points and 19 rebounds, but the Hawks finished 29 and 51, missing the playoffs. St. Louis picked up up a lot of talent in the 1962 draft as they selected Zelmo Beatty, Bill Bridges, and Chico Vaughn. Lenny Wilkins joined Pettit in the All-Star game this season. Bob's averages of 28 and 15 led the Hawks to a 48 and 34 record in a matchup against the Pistons in the semifinals. The Pistons were led by Dan Ole and Dave DeBusschere, but Bob would dominate this series, averaging 36 points and 17 rebounds as the Hawks won in 4 games. The Lakers were next in the division finals as their third-year guard Jerry West had become a star, forming a formidable duo with Elgin Baylor. The Hawks lost a hard-fought series in 7 games as Bob averaged 29 and 14. In 1963, the Hawks were competitive again, finishing 46 and 34 behind Bob's 27 and 15 a night. They faced the Lakers in the semifinals, and they were able to win in 7 games as Bob averaged 21 and 16. St. Louis met the San Francisco Warriors in the division finals, but they would lose in 7 games as Wilt averaged 39 points and 23 rebounds for the series. The Hawks selected Paul Silas in the second round of the 1964 draft after their frontcourt was dominated in the playoffs last year, but things would change drastically in St. Louis as Bob would get injured for the first time in his career, although he still averaged 22 points and 12 rebounds in 50 games. The Hawks finished 45 and 35 as Richie Guerin had to be a player coach for them. They faced the Baltimore Bullets in the semis, who had Don Ole, Bailey Howell, Walt Bellamy, and Gus Johnson. The Bullets had too much firepower as they easily won the series in 4 games, as Bob played sparingly off the bench, only averaging 11 points and 6 rebounds. Bob would retire after this season even though he was still in his athletic prime. He would later say it was because the NBA wasn't paying all that well, as his only reported salary was an $11,000 contract he signed with the Hawks as a rookie. Bob had received a job offer from a Baton Rouge bank 2 years before, and at the time, working in the banking industry was probably more lucrative than playing in the NBA. In my day, we didn't make enough money to live on for the rest of our lives. We all had to work after basketball, he said. Bob worked in the banking industry for 23 years before retiring from financial consulting in 2006. Bob Petitt retired as an 11-time All-Star, 2-time MVP, 2-time scoring champion, and an NBA champion. His career averages were 26 points, 16 rebounds, and 3 assists. He was inducted to the NBA Hall of Fame in 1970. Bob Petitt was one of the best big men of his time. He revolutionized the game with his unique skill set, but he still manages to go underneath the radar. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate you guys for watching this video. This is a really unique era because I don't think a lot of people have made content on like the 50s NBA really. So this is a very unique video, just seeing how much the game has evolved. I really had to dig for the stats, you know, so this was a really nice research, but thank you for watching. I really appreciate all you guys. Thank you for all the support on these videos, man, especially this Andrew Toney video. You guys are really loving that one. I like that. But thank you. Please be safe. Stay on the grind. I'm out. Peace.